The evening was quiet, almost too quiet, when my phone buzzed against the coffee table. I glanced down, frowning at the unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. Nearly everyone I knew was already saved in my contacts, so this immediately felt strange. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I swiped to answer and said, "Hello? Who's speaking?" My tone was polite, but a little edge of caution slipped through. The voice that came back was urgent, almost desperate, and it instantly set me on alert. "Sorry to bother you, Nora," the man rushed out, his words colliding. "I know you're very sick, but I need to reach your husband immediately. There's a critical issue at the company only he can fix, and he's not answering." I froze, my mind tripping over his words. Sick? Me? I hadn't even had so much as a cold in months, and here was my husband's boss insisting I was bedridden. My heart picked up, a knot forming in my stomach. I gripped the phone tighter, heat rising in my chest. "Sick? I'm not sick at all. Perfectly fine," I snapped back, my voice sharper than I intended. "Isn't he at the office with you?" I pressed, already bracing myself. The pause on the line dragged before the boss spoke again, sounding just as confused as I felt. "No, he left early. Said he had to rush home and take care of you, that you were bedridden." My breath caught, and in that moment, I knew something was terribly wrong. My pulse thudded in my ears, and for a second I wondered if I'd misheard him. But no, the words were clear. Victor had told his boss I was so ill I couldn't get out of bed. I forced a laugh, sharp and bitter, to cover the wave of disbelief crashing inside me. "That's impossible," I said, lowering my voice as though confessing a secret. "I haven't been sick in months, not even a sniffle." My chest tightened with a mix of confusion and fury. Why would he lie like that? The boss hesitated, his voice carrying genuine concern. "Nora, I don't understand. He looked me in the eye and said you needed him at home. I wouldn't have let him leave otherwise." The weight of his words pressed on me, heavier with each syllable. I could almost picture Victor's face, rehearsed and convincing, spinning a story with ease. My fingers trembled as I clutched the phone, anger bubbling just beneath my skin. "I see," I muttered, more to myself than to the man on the other end. The truth was unraveling right in front of me, thread by thread. 1,000 questions collided in my mind. Where was he really? Who was he with? And most of all, how long had he been hiding behind me as his excuse? My voice dropped to a whisper, cold and steady. "Thank you for telling me. Don't worry, I'll find out exactly what he's doing." The moment I ended the call, the silence in the room felt deafening. I sat there, staring at the phone in my hand, my reflection faintly visible on the darkened screen. My thoughts spiraled, torn between denial and the sharp sting of betrayal. Victor had looked me in the eyes just this morning, kissed my cheek, and said he'd be working late. My stomach churned at the memory, now tainted with lies. I pressed my palm against my chest, trying to steady my breathing, but it only made the fury burn hotter. I wasn't sick, far from it. And yet, he'd used me, twisted my name into a convenient excuse to cover his tracks. I could feel the anger shifting into something sharper, something determined. If Victor thought his lies would go unnoticed, he'd underestimated me. Leaning forward, I unlocked my phone again, my thumb hovering over the screen. I already knew what I had to do. There were ways to trace the truth, to see exactly where he'd gone when he walked out of that office. My jaw tightened as I whispered to myself, "If you think you're clever, Victor, just wait. Tonight, I'll catch you red-handed." With my hand still trembling, I opened the tracking app I'd installed months ago. At first, the little dot pulsed on the map, and for a second I prayed it would land at his office, proving me wrong. But no, it glowed steadily downtown, right over a high-end restaurant I knew all too well. My throat tightened as the realization settled in. This wasn't a business crisis. This was something far more personal. I leaned back in my chair, staring at that glowing dot as if it could explain everything. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing louder than the last. He wasn't at work. He wasn't at home. He was sitting somewhere expensive, somewhere intimate, while I was here, being painted as a sick excuse. I clenched my jaw so tightly it hurt. My husband had turned me into a cover story, and now I wanted to know who he was covering for. The rage inside me boiled hotter than I thought I could handle. I pushed myself up, grabbed my car keys from the bowl near the door, and whispered out loud, as if he were standing right there. "So this is your late night at work? Let's see who you're really taking care of, Victor." The words steadied me, fueling me. I wasn't just going to sit here and wonder. I was going to see it with my own eyes. I slipped into my coat, my movements sharp and mechanical, every gesture powered by adrenaline. My fingers shook as I jammed the key into the lock, the metallic click sounding louder than usual. Outside, the night air hit me, crisp and biting, but it did nothing to cool the fire raging inside me. My footsteps crunched on the pavement as I headed for the car, determination tightening every muscle in my body. Sliding into the driver's seat, I gripped the steering wheel, pausing just long enough to gather myself. My reflection in the rearview mirror startled me. I looked pale, tense, eyes wide with something between fury and heartbreak. For a moment, doubt whispered, "What if I was wrong?" But then I remembered his boss's confusion, the certainty in his voice. No, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. I started the engine, the sound roaring to life, vibrating through me like a battle cry. My heart raced as I pulled out of the driveway, every turn of the wheel carrying me closer to the truth. The glowing dot on the map stayed still, waiting for me at that restaurant downtown, and with every mile I drove, the thought repeated in my head like a mantra. Tonight, I'll see exactly who Victor has been lying for. The city lights blurred past as I drove, their glow painting streaks of yellow and red across the windshield. My grip tightened on the wheel, knuckles white, the tension in my chest growing heavier with every block I passed. I replayed Victor's lies in my head, his tender excuses, the way he always said he was working late for us. The words felt like poison now, dripping with betrayal. As I neared downtown, traffic slowed, but my patience had long run out. I tapped my fingers against the steering wheel, every second stretching longer than the last. My mind painted images I didn't want to see. Victor laughing, leaning in close, sharing himself with someone else in ways he no longer shared with me. The thought sent a sting of tears to my eyes, but I blinked them away. Finally, the restaurant's golden lights came into view, glowing like a stage set for the truth I was about to face. My pulse quickened, the weight in my stomach sinking deeper. I parked a few spaces away, my breath uneven, hands clammy on the steering wheel. The glowing dot on my phone was right there, inside. Victor was there, and I was about to find out exactly what he was doing. I stepped out of the car, my heels clicking against the pavement, each sound ricocheting through the night like a countdown. The restaurant loomed ahead of me, all warm lights and polished glass, the kind of place where people celebrated anniversaries, not destroyed them. My chest felt tight as I approached, every step weighted with both dread and determination. Through the wide windows, I spotted him. Victor, my husband, the man who swore he was burning the midnight oil at the office. Except he wasn't surrounded by spreadsheets or colleagues. He was laughing, wine glass in hand, sitting at a table with two women. One had her fingers curled possessively around his arm. The other leaned in close, lips brushing his ear. The sight hit me like a punch straight to the ribs. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The noise of clinking silverware and muffled conversations inside blurred into a dull roar, my pulse drowning it all out. I pressed a hand to the cool glass, steadying myself as fury boiled over the initial shock. My husband had turned me into a sick excuse so he could sit here, parading his lies over wine, and I wasn't about to stand outside like some bystander. No, he was going to see me. I pushed open the door, the heavy wood groaning as if announcing my entrance. The warmth and chatter of the restaurant washed over me, but I barely noticed. My heels struck the floor with sharp precision, each step echoing like a warning bell. Heads began to turn, diners glancing up from their plates as I made my way through the maze of tables, eyes locked on him. My pulse was hammering, but I walked with the kind of steady fury only betrayal can fuel. Victor looked up mid-laugh, and the color drained from his face the moment he saw me. His smile froze, glass trembling slightly in his hand. The women beside him exchanged quick glances, confusion flickering into unease. I stopped at the edge of their table, planting myself like an unmovable storm. My voice came out cold, cutting through the din of the room. Victor, shouldn't you be at the office? Or perhaps at home nursing your sick wife, the one who isn't sick at all? The room seemed to still, conversations faltering as people leaned closer to catch the unfolding drama. Victor's mouth opened, stammering, "Nora, this isn't what it looks like." His words rang hollow, falling flat against the truth I had just witnessed. My lips curled into a mocking smile, sharp enough to wound. Really? Because it looks like dinner, wine, and lies. Plenty of lies. One of the women leaned closer to him, her voice barely a whisper but sharp enough for me to catch. "You said she was bedridden," she murmured, her words slicing through me like glass. My jaw tightened, and I turned my gaze on her, my tone snapping before Victor could even respond. "Oh, don't worry. He's very good at making up stories. Too bad they always catch up to him." Her eyes widened, and she shrank back slightly, as if realizing she'd been pulled into a storm far bigger than she imagined. Victor reached out a hand, palm up, as if he could somehow contain the damage. "Nora, please," he begged, his voice trembling. "Let's not do this here. We can talk in private." His desperation only fueled the fire in my chest. I straightened my shoulders, raising my chin, and let my eyes sweep the room. Every set of eyes was on us now, the weight of their judgment pressing down on him. He wanted privacy. I wanted truth, and truth deserved light. I looked back at him, steady and unflinching. "No, Victor. You made your choice the second you used me as your excuse. Tonight, you answer for it right here." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the clink of a fork dropped somewhere in the room. My words hung between us like a blade, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. Victor leaned toward me, his voice strained, almost pleading. "Nora, please, let's talk about this in private. You're making a scene." His words dripped with desperation, as if the only thing that mattered was how he looked to the strangers around us. My chest tightened with rage. A scene? No, this wasn't me making anything. It was him, spinning lies, painting me sick, and parading himself here with two women like a king in his castle of deceit. I felt the fire rise in me, and I didn't hold it back. My voice cut through the restaurant, louder now, sharper, designed to be heard by every pair of curious ears around us. A scene? You made the scene the moment you invented a sick wife to cover your double life, Victor. I caught the ripple of whispers spreading like wildfire, diners exchanging looks, some shaking their heads in open disapproval. And for once, I wanted him to feel every ounce of shame. He tried again, fumbling for words, his face flushed. "It's not like that." But I wouldn't let him spin another web. I raised a hand, silencing him mid-sentence. "Enough." The word rang out, final and cold. My chest heaved, but my voice stayed steady. "Pack your things. When you get home, your suitcase will be waiting outside. You don't live with me anymore." The air around us felt electric, charged with the shock of my declaration. And still, I didn't look away. Victor's mouth opened, but no words came out. He just sat there, caught between the women who had suddenly gone silent and the weight of every eye in the restaurant pressing down on him. His glass shook slightly in his hand before he set it down, fingers fumbling against the stem. For the first time, I saw the cracks in his polished facade, fear creeping in where arrogance used to live. The women beside him looked uncomfortable now, shifting in their seats as though they wanted to vanish into the linen tablecloth. One of them muttered, "Maybe we should go." But neither moved. Their hesitation only made Victor's humiliation sharper, and I could see it in his eyes. He hated being exposed, stripped of the control he thought he had. That alone gave me strength. I kept my stance firm, my voice steady but charged with emotion. "Do you know what's worse than betrayal, Victor? It's the insult of using me, my name, my life, as your shield. You didn't just cheat. You turned me into your excuse, your alibi. And for that, I'll never forgive you. Gasps rippled through the room, and though my heart was pounding, I stood tall, knowing there was no turning back from what I just declared. Victor's face crumpled, the confident man I once knew replaced by someone cornered, desperate, and small. "Nora, please," he whispered, almost a whimper now. "We can fix this. Don't end it like this." His plea only deepened the hollow pit in my chest. Fix this? He thought this was a flat tire or a broken hinge, but this wasn't something you patched up. It was shattered glass, and I wasn't about to bleed myself trying to piece it back together. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear, though I knew half the restaurant was straining to catch every word. "You ended it the moment you lied to them. To me, to everyone. You ended it when you turned me into your alibi. All that's left now is the truth, and I won't carry your lies for one more day." I straightened, meeting his eyes for the last time in that room, letting him see the cold finality there. Behind me, I heard the clatter of dishes, the murmur of strangers who had witnessed it all. Their judgment didn't scare me. It fueled me. I wanted him to feel their eyes on his back long after I walked out. With one final glance at the women frozen beside him, I turned, heels clicking as I walked toward the door. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking, but I knew this was only the beginning. When he came home tonight, he wouldn't be walking into his life anymore. He'd be walking out of it. By the time I got home, the adrenaline still pulsed through me, sharper than caffeine. I didn't sit down. I didn't pace. I knew exactly what had to be done. I went straight to the bedroom, yanked an empty set of boxes from the closet, and began filling them with Victor's things. Shirts, ties, the cufflinks he loved to show off. Piece by piece, I stripped his presence from my space. Every folded shirt felt like a reclaiming of power, a reminder that I didn't have to live in his shadow anymore. I worked quickly, my hands steady now, almost calm. With each drawer emptied, I felt lighter. The house, once cluttered with his mess, started to breathe again. I carried the boxes to the porch, stacking them neatly beside the door like a final statement. This is where you end. This is where I begin again. The sound of cardboard scraping against wood was oddly satisfying, like punctuation at the end of a sentence I'd been waiting too long to write. When I changed the locks, the click of the new bolt sliding into place was more than just security. It was freedom. I stood there for a moment, hand resting on the doorknob, my chest swelling with a mix of sorrow and triumph. For the first time in years, this house was mine. Mine to protect, mine to fill with honesty and peace. And when Victor arrived tonight, he'd find out just how permanent that change was. It was close to midnight when headlights swept across the front window. I stood by the door, arms crossed, heart steady this time. The engine cut off, and then came the sound of hesitant footsteps on the porch. A soft rattle at the knob followed, but the lock didn't budge. I opened the door just enough to face him, the stack of boxes at his feet a silent reminder of what he'd lost. His eyes darted from the boxes to me, wide and panicked. "Nora, don't do this," he begged, his voice cracking. "We can fix it." "I'll stop." He reached toward me as if his words could bridge the chasm he had created. For a fleeting moment, I saw the man I'd once loved standing there, desperate and small, but the feeling passed as quickly as it came. I kept my voice cold, every syllable deliberate. "Stop? You already stopped being my husband the moment you used me as your excuse. You turned me into your shield, Victor. You don't get to stand on this porch and ask for forgiveness now." His shoulders sagged, and in his silence, I heard the collapse of everything he thought he controlled. This time I wasn't the one breaking. I was the one walking away stronger. His voice broke as he tried again. "Please, just listen." But I shook my head, cutting him off before he could weave another lie. My words were final, sharp as a blade. "No, Victor, you listen. I don't need a liar in my home. I don't need a man who hides behind my name to cover his double life. Get out." The porch light caught the tears in his eyes, but they meant nothing to me now. He had cried wolf one too many times, and this time no one was coming to save him. He stood frozen for a moment, torn between protest and defeat, before finally lowering his gaze. Without another word, he lifted one of the boxes, his movements heavy, drained of the arrogance he once wore like armor. I watched him walk down the steps, each stride carrying him further away from the life he had destroyed. And with every step he took, I felt the weight lifting from my shoulders. When the night grew quiet again, I closed the door and leaned against it, breathing deeply. The house smelled of fresh paint and old wood, familiar yet newly mine. For the first time in years, I felt safe within these walls, untouched by his lies. And though my heart still ached, there was a clarity, a freedom, that made me smile through the tears. Little did he know, his downfall was only beginning. Weeks passed, and the silence in my house settled into something comforting, like a soft blanket I hadn't realized I needed. One afternoon, as I was watering the plants by the window, my phone rang again. This time the number wasn't unknown. I recognized it instantly. Victor's boss. My chest tightened, but curiosity pushed me to answer. His voice was calmer now, almost apologetic. "Nora, I thought you should know. Victor no longer works here." I stayed quiet, letting him continue. "After lying about you being sick and other questionable behaviors we discovered, we had no choice but to terminate him. For cause." His words landed with a strange finality, like a door closing that I hadn't even realized was still ajar. I leaned against the windowsill, listening, a slow calm filling me. "Thank you for telling me," I said at last, my voice steady, detached. He made his choices. Now he's living with them. Hanging up, I stared out at the sunlight streaming through the glass, watching it scatter across the floor. Victor's lies had finally swallowed him whole, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt relief. Not long after that call, word spread quickly. Victor's polished image crumbled faster than he could repair it. The same colleagues who once shook his hand now avoided his gaze, whispers following him like shadows. Without his job, his income, or his reputation, the mask he wore so carefully slipped away. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that the women who once sat beside him at that restaurant vanished the moment his downfall became public. They weren't interested in the wreckage he had become. I can't say I was surprised. Victor had built his world on lies and borrowed charm, and when it all collapsed, there was nothing left for anyone to cling to. He had always thought he could juggle stories, keep one foot in every world, but lies have a way of rotting the ground you stand on. Watching from a distance, I realized I didn't need revenge in flames. His own deceit had been enough to burn everything he valued. At night, when the house was quiet, I sometimes thought back to that phone call, the one that first cracked everything open. What felt like the worst kind of betrayal had become the turning point of my freedom. He'd used me as an excuse, a story to cover his sins. But now, stripped of everything, he was left with nothing but his excuses. And I was finally free of them. One evening, as I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, I let myself breathe in the quiet. No lies, no late-night excuses, no gnawing suspicion eating away at me. Just peace. The air was cool, the sky painted with streaks of gold, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at home in my own life. Victor's absence was no longer a wound. It was a space where healing could finally grow. I thought about how he had used me, twisted my name into a convenient shield. But in the end, his downfall was his own creation. The lies that once protected him had turned into chains, dragging him under until he had nothing left. And there I was, standing on the other side of it all, stronger, clearer, unbroken. I smiled into the fading light, the final thought settling in like truth etched in stone. He used me as his excuse. In the end, the only excuse left was his own downfall. And with that, I stepped back inside, closing the door on that chapter of my life for good.